Hi class, this is Context Presentation 3, Legacies of European Colonialism in Guyana by Faye, Alek, Baez, Bruno, Bartolek, and Caleigh Hatcher. So a little bit of brief background information. Guyana is near the equator as seen by the image to the right. Even though it is in South America, it is still considered to be a Caribbean country because of its proximity to the Caribbean Sea. And as you've already probably figured out from your reading, Guyana was a former slave country and they gained independence in 1966. Associated with this, being near the equator, Guyana is packed with tropical rainforests and, importantly, rich plantation lands. Specifically, these plantations were popularized along the coast, which can be reasoned is due to Georgetown's proximity and influence along the coastline. As related by your reading an English table book, bugs and rain were thick in this area, also making it prone to various diseases. Alright, so moving on to the economics and history of Guyana. Guyana was colonized by the Dutch, followed by the British. The Dutch began building up the plantation economy of Guyana and imported African slaves to work on plantations producing sugar, cotton, indigo, and coffee. Several years after Britain took control of Guyana, 1814, slavery was abolished. This led to the need for new cheap labor, so indentured servants from India and China were brought to Guyana. Indentured workers were brought from these countries as cheap labor and weren't technically slaves, but they were treated as such. However, Britain did not want Guyana to compete with British industry, so it limited the industrialization of Guyana.
So here, demographics are listed in order of highest to lowest percentages. The main ethnic groups of Guyana are East Indians, Blacks, Native Americans, Portuguese, and Chinese. The three main religious groups in Guyana are Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam, but many more African, Indian, and Native American beliefs have influenced the region. For example, Obeah, a prominent folk religion from Africa, which was common in other areas of the Caribbean as well, has had a heavily influence on Guyanese culture. For example, Olheek is a female vampire who transforms into a ball of fire and feeds on the blood of children at night. In the reading, there was also a reference to multiple superstitions about the dead and a story about the dead woman who started to eat people who were sleeping in the house. This tale leads to the conclusion that some people must stay awake at a funeral where others can sleep. So this quote summarizes the post-colonial period in Guyana. Decolonization is a process, not a rival, involving an ongoing dialectic between European or British discourses and their post-colonial dismantling. Guyana, as in many other third world countries, is still going through the process of decolonization. The country still primarily produces raw materials similar to when it was a British colony. Now, the present-day effects of colonialism in Guyana include limited economic development, as the country is still limited to natural resources production for first world countries. For instance, the U.S. has taken over most of its bauxite production, and Venezuela is contesting their oil-rich border. Guyana is still effectively haunted by the colonial period in that it remains a third world producer that is taken advantage of by the first world industrialized consumers. There are still remaining religious and racial tensions in the country, but however there is generally peace, unity, and national pride among the Guyanese. The indigenous people's culture is also not threatened by the current government. And even though a struggling economy is still present, Guyanese societies and the culture, it continues to blend different backgrounds.
Alright, here just to end off with some questions. How is the meaning behind the political commentary that takes place within the beginning of English table book framed?
The second question is, how does the socioeconomic class factor into the reading, and can one relate this to the ethnic groups of present-day Guyana?
And lastly, how is the way in which the Guyanese carry out the English table book for the dead English significant? Thank you. Alright, and here's our works cited page for all of the text that we use, and here's the works cited for all of the pictures. Thank you.